Greg Frank, the Credit Educator here with Superior Credit Care, teaching you all about your credit score. In this video, we want to take you beyond the basics and give you a deeper understanding. So if you haven't already watched our previous video on how your FICO score is calculated, I would strongly suggest that you watch that particular video first. The first point I want to convey here is that your credit score is not a living, breathing thing. Instead, it is a snapshot in time at the moment that someone pulls it. In other words, you're going to apply for a loan. You walk into a bank and the banker pulls your credit. What actually happens is that the system takes a snapshot of your credit information as it exists in that moment and feeds it through the FICO scoring software with all of its 1,200 mathematical algorithms that slice it and dice it and spit out a number. So understanding that your credit score is a snapshot, what you should do is not get your credit pulled unless that snapshot looks as good as it possibly can. So say, for example, that you have high balances on some credit cards right now. Before you get your credit pulled, you should get those balances paid down. It'll take a much better picture, which will translate into a much higher score. So remember, credit score is a snapshot in time. Strategically position yourself so that the score will come out as high as possible when you need to get approved for something. The second thing that I want you to understand, and this is so important, is that the FICO scoring model is very much a system of punishment versus reward that is heavily geared toward the punishment. In other words, you get punished harder for bad things that happen than you get rewarded for the good things that happen. Remember in the previous video we talked about the 94 components that make up your FICO score? Well, in the book Debt Cures by Kevin Trudeau, he states that of those 94 components, 88 are geared to look for negative things, while only 6 are geared to look for positive things. So the main thing to understand is that you will get punished much harder for something bad that happens than you get rewarded for good things that happen. For example, let's say that you're cruising along, everything in your credit is good, and for some reason you have a little glitch and you happen to pay something late. Now, a single late payment on an open account, say a credit card, could lower your score as much as 50 points overnight. 50 points. Now, the next month you get back on track and pay that bill on time. Do you get the 50 points back? Hardly. You maybe get about 5 of those points back. Yes, unfortunately, it literally takes 9 to 12 months of consecutive on-time payments to make up for the single late payment that you had. The other thing to understand beyond this idea of punishment versus reward is that the most recent information carries the most weight. So situations that are present and ongoing are going to affect your credit score the most. In other words, again, you're going along, everything's fine, all of a sudden, say you lose your job. Now you're getting behind on things. You get 30, 60, 90 days delinquent on several accounts. It's going to absolutely wreak havoc with your credit score. Any situation that is present and ongoing, in other words, accounts that are delinquent right now today, those situations must be resolved before your score will begin to improve. The other thing is that when negative information hits your report, it impacts your report immediately. So it does all the damage the moment it first hits the report. So for example, collection accounts. The moment a collection account hits your report is when it does all the damage. And then that damage gradually starts to fade as that information ages. Now, one of the questions I get all the time is, how much does something affect my score? Now, I've been to classes and seminars and read books where someone says, well, this affects it this much and this affects it that much. And to be honest, anyone who says that something affects your score exactly a certain number of points is not to be trusted, because how much something actually affects your score depends on the entirety of your credit report and will vary from person to person. For example, if you have only one open account that's being credit reported and you make a late payment on that account, it's going to hurt you a lot more than if you have 10 open credit accounts, make a late payment on one of them, but the other 9 are being paid on time, because the on-time payments on the other 9 will help offset the damage done by the late payment on the one account. Whereas if you only have one account, you have nothing else positive to offset that information. But just as a general guideline, if you make a late payment on a, say, low-limit credit card or a department store card, it could cost you 30 to 40 points. A major credit card with a higher limit could cost you 40 to 60 points. A late payment on a car loan could cost you easily 40 to 60, even 70 points. A late payment on a mortgage, perhaps as much as 70 or 80 points. The bigger the account, the more weight it carries toward the score. The other thing that I want to convey is that how much something negative affects your credit score has to do with an inverse proportion to how good your credit actually is. In other words, the better your credit, the higher your score, the more any one negative thing will impact that score. I recently saw someone who had literally perfect credit, had never had a single blemish in their life. Their credit score was 770, and a collection account hit their report, dropped the score to 663, 103 points. Now, conversely, let's say your score isn't that good. Let's say your score is in the low 500s and you already have numerous collection accounts on your report. If a new collection account hits, it will lower the score, but certainly not by 100 points. It's going to lower it maybe 10 or 15 points because your credit's already not so good. So the better your credit, the more anything negative affects your score. So please understand your credit score is a snapshot in time at the moment someone pulls it. It's a system of punishment versus reward that's more heavily geared toward punishing you than rewarding you, and negative information has the most impact the moment it hits the credit report. So you really want to do everything in your power to avoid allowing negative information to hit the report. Please join us in the next video.